Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're going to work on a classic reel today. We're going to work on a Daiwa. It's the Daiwa 4300, and it's a beautiful little reel. It kind of mimics the Mitchell reel, a Mitchell 300 in size, and kind of in performance as well. You'll see that this one's running nicely, and this one was sent in by Ronald. He had asked me to tune this up and get it ready to go fishing. So we're going to do just that. We're going to check the functions and features first. We want to make sure it's spinning. We want to make sure that our bail is flipping. I'd like to make sure that the anti-reverse works or doesn't work. This one has a sticking one. Something's going on there where it's not disengaging. That's all right. We'll figure that out when we take this open. And we'll show you how to take this apart, service it, and get it fishing again. So I'd like to start by removing the external parts. First thing I'm going to do then is remove the handle, and while I'm doing that I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody that's involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. Without their efforts we would be in far worse shape than we are, and everything that they do to keep us out of harm's way truly is appreciated. Thank you. The spool can come next. We have a push button spool that releases there. That's very similar to a Mitchell reel as well. And we have a keyway and a rotor nut on there that we'll get to in a moment. But let's go underneath. We remove the handle. Let's take this side off. We're going to try and figure out why that anti-reverse override is not working. It may be a broken part, and if it's a broken part we're going to be in trouble because those parts are no longer available. So Daiwa makes a quality reel, and I can guess this one was probably made in Japan, although they did have some in Korea as well. Engineered and developed by Daiwa Corp, California, manufactured in Japan. So that's under the bottom here, and that's that little imprinting that you see there on the bottom. It's interesting to note, if you find some Sears reels like a Ted Williams or the like, King Neptunes I think is another one, take a look underneath the spool of the Sears reel. You will find in many cases that it says that, and those Sears reels are Daiwa reels. Okay, so we have a very clean reel on the inside of this one, and that's probably what's keeping it going, but it might also be why this little override switch is not working, and we're just going to have to kind of go figure that one out there. What I'm going to do while we do this is I'm just going to put a little bit of penetrating oil in there. Now let's sit and see if that in some way can free it up. It may be that this switch handle is on backwards. That's kind of what I'm looking at. I think the switch handle is mounted backwards here. Let's see if we can just solve this one right away. Because what I'm looking at here, this lobe, and we can get this out of the way. We'll take the pin out of here. There's a pin that holds the axle, the cross part together. When you do that, then you can remove your axle shaft. I'm putting all of my pieces and parts into a part tray. It's the bottom of a jug, and that way I keep track of all of those. And we can remove the crosswind block. And now here's what I'm looking at. This is in full throw here, and I'm thinking to myself, the way that this spring is set up and the way that this lobe is going, that this has to turn to where it is. So it looks to me as though we are probably a half stroke off in terms of the throw on this. So I don't know if this one came off in the past somewhere, but to me it looks like it belongs over here. So let's go put that back on and see if that remedies this. It also wouldn't make sense to have this throw below the reel, because then you would bump it. So let's see what happens now. Well, I think we're kind of stuck here is what we are. And it may just be that that is frozen at this point, because we're getting the movement here that we should be getting, but this is not turning. So my guess is that we've got a frozen peg, So what we'll do here now is we're going to take this off. We'll put some penetrating oil in the case and see if we can't loosen it up that way. And if not, at least it's stuck in the right position. It's stuck in a position where it's holding as a hold fast as opposed to not. Let's go back and do the rest of this, and then we'll come back and see if there's anything we can do to remedy that situation there. All right, this should have a 12mm nut up there. It might be a little bit bigger. Let's see. Yeah, it's bigger. So I keep a case of sockets right on my desk. In this particular version of the reel, we're going to need the deep socket to get in there. You're not going to be able to do that with a box wrench. And once I find that, I just have those nearby. I don't like to leave tools in out of the way places, because you can be doing this and the next thing you know, you have to put it down and go search for a tool, and when you come back you've kind of forgotten your orientation or whatever. Alright, we can walk this up then. We have that little keyway there. We should be able to walk the rotor up. Next thing up then, we have a snap ring here that's holding the bearing in place, so we need a snap ring pliers. And again, I have these pretty close at hand. The snap ring pliers has the 2 pins on the end of it that are going to grab the holes in the snap ring. And compress that snap ring. Now you notice I kept my finger on there because I didn't want this snap ring to shoot. But that's the snap ring, and you can see how those pins align and hold themselves in those 2 holes. You can see the holes better now. That goes in my parts tray. We'll be able to pick everything up now. We have our axle shaft and our bearing, and we have a little spacer, and we have our pinion gear. So we're going to clean the pinion gear. I'm just going to use a brush. It's very clean. I think if there's anything about this reel, it's that all of the grease has evaporated and gone away. So we're going to want to just service this. A little bit of light grease to where the spacer and the bearing are going to ride. A little bit more grease onto the teeth. Put that spacer on next. Put the bearing on next. We're just going to sit that in my parts tray as well. Now we can push our main gear through. Because you want to clean your main gear as well. And again, there's just a little bit of evidence that there's some dried grease behind there, so let's get that out. Notice that there's a very fine, almost paper thin, or even less than paper thin washer on the back here. Do not lose that washer. The inside of this is your anti-reverse click. So you don't need to grease that, but you do need to grease the teeth and the face of this main gear, as well as the shaft. So check first to make sure that all of the teeth are clear, that they're not chipped or broken in any regard. And get a good amount of grease on there, especially since this reel hasn't seen grease in a while. And then get the grease onto the face as well, because that's where your crosswind block is going to ride up and down on. Alright. Now this is pot metal here. There's not much you can do with this if this is frozen into the case. We've given this a little bit of time. I'm just going to try one more time on a lever. And we got it to move. There you go. So now you can see that it's moving. It's moving pretty tough, but I'm going to soak it again. But we have been able to get it to the point where it's moving. So patience is often the reason, the real savior in all of this. There we go. We're back. And I believe that even though this was showing on the other side of the case, I believe that it belongs on this side. But I could be wrong. I don't see why. There you go. I don't see why it should be hanging down there. That, to me, that doesn't make sense, but it might be the way that it is from an orientation. But to me, if you've got that lever hanging below, and maybe we can illustrate that here a little bit better with the pick. But if it's hanging below, to me, that's subject to getting whacked and knocked about, where I think if it goes on this side, like this, it's out of the way. We certainly have the clearance for it. So I'm going to vote for this way. And Ronald, if you know better than I do in terms of the orientation and you want to put it back the other way, you're going to be welcome to do that. But I think it belongs here, as it will not impede with the operation of the wheel. All right, I'll tighten that back up. I'll give you that illustration again. You can see how that cam moves. When the cam is on the high point, it's pulling this out, and when it moves back the other way, it's engaging. This is interesting. It's still weak from a screw down standpoint. Well, I think I can't get that screw tightened without putting it the other way, so there we go. I think lesson learned. I'm guessing it does go the other way. So let's put it back here, because I think that ridge is keeping us from fully tightening that down. Oh well, always learning something with these reels. That's a good point to tell you to take pictures along the way. We knew we saw it this way. I guess that is a bump stop. Okay, and boy, is that just doing what it should be doing, nice and easy now. So we use penetrating oil. It's not a good lubricant, so we're going to use regular fishing reel oil now to put a good dose on there. We'll also put a good dose here. That also seems a little loose. No, it's tight, and it's what it should be. All right, when you go to reinstall the main gear, make sure that this is in the off position. That was one of the reasons why I was fighting that piece so much. I wanted to get that to off so that it could be easily merged into the back end here, where it's going to be the anti-reverse. A good healthy amount of grease onto the collar. Insert the main gear in. Flip the stud out of the way. Now we can get back up top with the other assembly that we just rebuilt. You want to get oil onto the bearing. This is a single bearing reel, but you know what? It's got the bearing in the right place, right? So merge those in. You got to make sure your pinion gear gets in there, and you want to make sure that you're properly seated with this. Okay, I'm going to take that snap ring. We're going to reverse it now. We're going to pull in, and then we're going to let the compression out. So again, you have two holes here on the snap ring. You have the two points on the back end of the pliers, and a little bit of hand strength and coordination needed here. But generally speaking, you can get this pretty good. And there's really no easy solution to this if you don't have a snap ring pliers. I have a mini snap ring set. I think I may move over to that if I can't get it on this one. But the mini snap ring set was available on the internet for next to nothing, a couple of dollars for four different pieces. Once you do that, make sure that you've got the spin going right. This is spinning beautifully. Come on back and take that rotor. Make sure it's clean on the inside. This one is. There's not much you can do here with the paint loss. All we're going to do here is clean up the old grease. And I have a little rod and reel cleaner. It's pen rod and reel cleaner. And I'll give it a shot or two. I use a kitchen scrubby pad, and typically that'll take off the surface grease and grime that's accumulated, and it'll restore it to some extent, but it's not going to replace the worn or corroded or broken pieces of the paint that may have leafed off over time. And I guess some people ask me about repainting reels, and my answer is why. I kind of like the idea of the story that these tell. Before I close this up, I want to put some oil onto that little trip lever, make sure that that works fine. And as I go to install the rotor now, I'm going to hold down on the pinion gear so I don't push it through. Find the slot where it mounts, keep that keyway in there. Come on back up and grab the rotor nut. That goes on in a clockwise manner. Switch over your ratchet. Give it a little bit of a tightening. And then what I want to do here, I want to put the handle on before I go give it a little test ride. You can spin it now, but there's nothing anchoring that main gear. So I much prefer to bring the main gear the way it should. And right now, before I go to assemble any more, let's just go make sure that it's spinning nice and smooth, and boy is it ever. It was working smooth with no oil or grease. Go figure that one out. You can imagine what it's doing now that it has the right complement of that. Okay, we didn't mention this before, but we should have. You should take pictures along the way. For example, this is the back side of the crosswind block, and you need to take a picture and make sure you know which way the pin was. Was the pin to the bottom or the top, right? It's easy enough to confuse it. Well, I made a mental note of it. It was on the bottom. But sometimes it's real easy to flip that around, and then your reel is not going to work properly. All right, axle shaft is next. Make sure it's nice and clean, which this one is. You just need a little bit of grease up top here. Don't put too much on. I just put too much on. Don't put too much on because it's only going to get pushed out when it goes through the pinion. So you want to bring that in. You want to seat it, and then now you're looking for this hole in the axle shaft. When you find that hole, align it with the hole in the block, and go grab that pin that we had. That pin goes through like that, and now you should have an axle shaft that's moving up and down. Now remember, we've kept this in the off position here when we went to install the main gear. So let's go ahead and put that into the on position again. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, the bail's been working. We don't need to do anything with that, but what I always recommend is spraying that down with a penetrating oil. That'll loosen up any dried grease that perhaps is in there. Just give it a flip or two. That's going to make it work easy. And then we'll test that after we put the spool back on. Lastly, let's take a look at that spool. This is like a Mitchell spool. It's got a pinion that comes through there. And I'm thinking, although I might be incorrect, there should be one washer on the inside of this. There may just be a metal press down. We're going to go see. Yeah, so we have a clip here that's holding these in. I'm going to pull the clip. Again, I have a finger on there because that is a spring, and you don't want those springs to shoot. So you'll notice that this little pick here gets a good workout in over the course of a reel repair or servicing. They're relatively inexpensive, but boy, there's really no replacing them. They kind of do it all. All right, this is our drag washer stack in here. We'll try and get these out. You should be able to push this pin through like that. You'll see how it comes through. And then we have our drag stack up top. And we have a traditional drag stack here. We have a solid washer that's going to be at the base. So these are hard washers. They don't need any kind of lubrication on them. So you get that. You have a round washer next. I believe that the Teflon goes in the middle. We popped that, I wasn't quite sure, but we're going to put the Teflon in the middle on this one. Then you have 4 points on this one. This is sometimes called the eared washer. That goes next. Here's your top washer. Here's your top washer to that. This completes the drag stack. We'll bring that ring in here. You need a little bit of hand string, but that ring will get back in there pretty easily. And then this one should go here, and everything goes back in. Now when you're going to put this back in, you got to twist and turn because 2 of those washers are keyed washers, and you need to locate them. And if you have trouble like I'm having trouble, go to the top end to set it up so that they all align. Now we got them all aligned. Come back in from the bottom. And you can push that up. You have a little clicker here that's going to tell you that the drag is spinning backwards. You need to move that out of the way to push it up the rest of the way. And now we can go ahead and put the top drag nut on, or tension adjuster knob. Alright, the only other thing to do on this wheel is put that side plate cover on, put this back on, give it a final test, and Ronald's going to be able to take this thing fishing again. Alright, that goes on, the side plate screw goes on. I think we'll all be happy with the results of this one, and we've even restored that anti-reverse override. So sometimes it's trial and error, particularly on some of these older reels where you may not be able to get the schematics. Sometimes it's just kind of accumulated knowledge over time that tells you that you think it should go this way or that way. And in this case, I've kind of got it. So there you go. Oh, beautiful reel. You know, I'm kind of partial to the older reels. They did a nice job with these. This one's ready to go fishing. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. If you like it, please like it. If you want to see more of these, please subscribe. If you do subscribe, please hit the notification button. That way you'll see all the ones that I post, and you can make a determination as to whether you want to watch those. I fix all kinds of reels, and my channel has got quite a diversity of fresh and salt water and spinning and conventional and bait caster and everything like that. So I do post frequently. If you have a question on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe it's not shown, but you're working on one, or maybe you're stuck on something, if you leave that question in the comments section, I'll be able to respond to you and try and help you out with that. And then finally, if you have a reel that you'd like serviced like Ronald, and you don't want to do it yourself, well, please contact me by the email on the business card that follows, and I'll give you that repair information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.